Why should the views of some matter and others don't? And yet it's in the same country where they'll have the same amount of vote that should count.
No,
Why should that
I'm not saying that some views don't matter. No. Of course not. I mean, that will be to use a religious expression. That will be that will be sacrilege. You know, but everybody's view matters. But what I'm saying is that, by and large, it is the reasonable views. You don't want the dominant view to be the Boko Haram doctrine, do you, or ideology? What you expect when you gather people to talk about the country is what those mainstream views that are obviously going to aid progress, not views that will draw us back.
One of the things that one of your accusations, you know, because I was trying to, you know, follow your train of thought.
Yes.
One of your accusations was that this, you know, process was ill thought out. It wasn't properly thought out.
Yes.
Now, some people would disagree with you, in the sense that if you follow, first of all, the timing of the announcement of a conference was at Nigeria's independence anniversary.
Yes.
And then the president also said it was going to coincide with the year when Nigeria clocks 100.
Yes.
And we've had issues living together as a nation.
Yes.
And the issues that need to be thrashed
addressed,
out.
yes.
He did not agree at first, but he says that he's seen reason. And some people will say that that is one of the qualities of leadership. That's one. It's taken 6 months.
Yes.
To come up with a committee, or he came up with a committee who was to advise him, and he took them, you know, maybe about 6 weeks, 2 months, you know, to come up with something. You said them to invest in the country, taking opinions, and then finally collating it before they arrived at the modalities.
Yes.
Doesn't that show a thought process going into the constitution of this particular conference?
Well, it may well be so, Mope. It may well be so. But, you know, for an issue, that is to say, having a national conference, which has been a recurring one since perhaps the mid-80s, you know, and then to suddenly wake up and be persuaded to the view that it is now or never is, you know, very highly suspect. You see, if it was something that the president was going to decide on as quickly as he did, we ought to have had hints of it, perhaps as far back as at least 2012.
But following the process, you know, since the announcement of that particular conference, I'm also getting the vibes that we've also seen in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, and the debate that had preceded the, you know, the amendment of a constitution as to whether or not we needed a new constitution or whether we needed an amendment. You know, did it come as a shock to you that eventually the president agreed to, you know, a conference?
He did, and I think I'm not the only one who felt shocked.
And do you have any grounds with the process that it has gone through to be able to get to, you know, the modalities, to what we have now as the modalities of this conference?
Well, you see, precisely why I'm expressing the view, I'm taking the position that it seems to me a product of not well thought out process.
Because he changed his mind?
Well, not because he changed his mind. You see, take as an example. After the elections in 2011, everybody was anticipating election 4 years later. All right? And you see, for an idea to really gather the kind of, if you like, speed and consensus that you require to move forward, you know, you have to have been put this idea on the market, trying to sell it for a while. You see, if you know, the way we human beings, you know, are programmed, is that, especially a community, an idea may be so bright and good. If members of the community don't buy into it,
you think that's what we have now?
I think that is what we are likely to have.
Some people would disagree with you.
But leading up to this, we have seen loads and loads of calls. Every time we have people, or the advisory committee when we went around the country, was just some few, just a dissenting view from just a few number of people who have actually said, well, they don't want this conference. A whole lot of Nigerians have actually said they want to talk.
Well, you see, why I'm saying so, why I'm taking the position I'm taking is because across the land, there's so much despondency, despair, frustration.
And how do you resolve that?
Arising from the economic challenges that people face.
Isn't that why people would want to talk?
Well, I hope this is not going to be a mirage, because people actually believe that this is a once and for all panacea, which is not likely to be the case.
Yes,
not likely to be the case.
Yes, you talk about suspicion, because what the committee will tell you they saw was not despondency to the idea of a national conference.
No.
That at every time they visited a particular area, the outcome or the turnout was overwhelming. They were totally in shock. And in one particular case where, Governor of the state said he was not in support, we saw what happened. I mean, at the public gathering, he was shouted out by some people.
Please don't misunderstand me.
Yes.
The despondency, the despair, it's not because people don't want the national conference. It is as a result of the economic challenges that people face. And therefore, they feel or believe that this national conference will be a panacea for their very many troubles, including the economic challenges, which is as a result of misgovernance.
And my question from that is, well, in solving all of that, how best can we go about it if not to talk? If you're talking about the despondency, the problems with the economy, and the frustration of Nigerians, isn't that why they should be talking?
Personally, I feel that the time that the committee that the federal government set up, the Jonathan administration, the time that they had to go all over the country and collate whatever, and the time that we have to put these delegates together, again, I think time is far too short. I also feel that the time that has been set aside to thrash out these recurring national questions is also short. You see, from experience, when you gather about 492 people together, all right, people from various backgrounds, various parts of the country, it will take a while to be acquainted with one another. All right, yes, and the politicians, believe it or not, are going to work on them. Perhaps they are put on Budu as where to hold the conference.
Let me take you back.
It will make a difference. But in Abuja, all kinds of influence.
Some of what you said initially was that,
yes,
the conference was being put together, to summarize what you said in part, is to garner political mileage for him.
Yes.
And now this is happening before the general elections.
Yes.
And then you say that if the communities don't buy into this, it may be a challenge.
It will be.
Now, if you look at those two comments, don't you think then, because you don't even know how it will turn out.
Yes.
So it does come across as though first you assume that this will go in a certain way. And then secondly, you then say, well, you don't know how it's going to come out. But the thing about it is this: even if the president wanted to get political mileage, and then this conference is happening before the general elections, don't you think that that would be some sort of gamble on his part? That's a risk, to use that word. A risk, because if it doesn't turn out well, it will go wrongly for him.
Yes.
So why then do people suspect it? Especially when you know that this is not a conference for political parties or his party. You have other parties there. So everybody go express yourself, and then everybody sees what happens.
You see, I'm not being negatively critical when I say that, it is suspect. All right? I actually mean well. You see, an idea, to get people to buy to an idea and to get them to actively and enthusiastically participate, you need them to understand how it's going to finish. You need them to appreciate that this is in their own best interest. You need them to have some time to reflect on it, that this idea on the table is in my own best interest. How effectively can I contribute? That is what I mean by suspect in the circumstances. Not in the negative sense, not to deride the presidency or the administration.
Let's also go into the outcomes that you listed. First of all, you talked about, you know, what the outcome was going to be and how it was going to be made law, whether it was going to be subject to referendum or the National Assembly.
Yes.
You also talked about representation, that we had thought was going to be something of ethnic nationalities. You know, but some of these things have actually been taken into consideration. The first one, the conference has been left to decide just how it's going to become law, whether it's going to be a brand new constitution, whether it's going to be merged with the old constitution, whether it's going to go through a referendum or go to the National Assembly. They have been left to that decision. The second one of representation, you've also heard, you know, the explanation that was given by the conference, by the committee rather, as to how difficult it was to establish ethnic nationalities and how they had to go through the other, you know, avenue of taking what you describe as a broader or a broad spectrum of Nigerians. Would you not say that in spite of the time that they have been able to factor in a lot, and they have actually been able to reach at least some conclusions that leaves it mainly in the hands of Nigerians as to whether or not this conference will be successful or not?
Well, perhaps we should wait and see. But, you know, what you do have on the ground today is a situation where all kinds of influences will come into play to influence the outcome. You see, as they say, there's hardly any ideal time to push a proposition or a proposal through. Ideally, it will have been before the commencement of the civilian administration. Ideally, it will have been after the 2015 general elections. But the timing at this time, for me, is bound to create all kinds of scenarios. Many of the factors, perhaps, we're not even, you know, aware of at the moment.
Okay, Mr. Gboye Leyinmu is a legal practitioner. Thank you very much indeed for coming on today.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you very much.
We'll return after this break. Join us again.